Hello. I lied. We are going to knock out this one last bit tonight. Yes, it is 2:22 a.m. But, hey, it is what it is. And then we would be done with day 7. And then we'll move on to day 8. And then we will be rolling with the homies. Anyway, I hope you're caught up because, yeah, like I said, it is 2:22 in the morning, and I'm not about to go back and recap all of this. So, we are in the George Zimmerman trial. He's charged with murder, 2nd degree, and the lesser manslaughter in something. He is claiming self-defense. State is doing a very good job of proving that they're self-defense. So, yeah. Where's it crooked? Yeah, that's my background. That's crooked. Maybe it's crooked. I don't know. Something looks crooked. Something looks off. I don't know how it could be off. Who knows? Anyway. Oh, no. Don't pay attention to what's behind the curtains. It's uneven. That's what it is. It's uneven up there. This is my background. So, anyway. All right, let's get started. They're going to get started and they're going to play some sort of interview. I think he did an interview. I don't know. Those are never good. But we'll see. We'll see. This one has closed captioning and we will speed it up. See how that goes. Actually get to hear George talk for a moment. Well, I mean, I guess we've heard him talk. But anyway, okay, let's go. And
yes,
I'm
ladies and gentlemen,
here.
at the direction of the court, certain portions of the defendant's interview with Sean Hannity on July 18, 2012 have been excised or redacted based upon legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This will, for the record, State's Exhibit 180.
And tonight, in an interview that you will only see right here on Hannity, George Zimmerman, the man charged with second-degree murder of Trayvon Martin, breaks his silence. Now, earlier today, I traveled to Seminole County, Florida. I said, let's go back to the night of the shooting. Take us back to that night. You were going to the store. Let's start at the beginning.
I was going to Target to do my weekly grocery shopping. Sunday nights was the only nights. Well, Sunday after we mentored the kids, we would always go grocery shopping and do our cooking for the week. So I wanted to go to Target, and I headed out, and that's the last time I've been home.
Since that, so you never went back since that day. We all have heard the 911 call. On that 911 call, you had mentioned that there had been a number of break-ins in the neighborhood. Why are you a community watch person? How long were you involved in that, and why did you become a community watch person?
In August of 2011, there was a home invasion. A young lady was home with her 9-month-old baby, and they broke in her sliding glass door. She barricaded herself in the upstairs bedroom, and my wife was home by herself, and she saw the people that brutalized her run through our backyard with their belongings, and even though my wife wasn't certain what happened, that was enough to scare her and shake her up, and I promised her I would do what I could to keep her safe.
Your gun was legal. You had a legal weapon in the state of Florida. Why did you feel the need to carry a gun? A lot of people maybe have a weapon inside their home, but you decided to carry it. Why did you think it was necessary to have a weapon with you? Or did you carry it at all times?
I carried it at all times except for when I went to work.
Yeah. A lot of this case, legally, has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it. And I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground?
No, sir.
You never heard about it before? Wow. Now, it was very interesting, in the 911 call that everybody has heard, you said that all of a sudden you found somebody who looked suspicious, he may be on drugs. That was one of the earlier comments that you made in that 911 call. What made you think he was suspicious, and what made you think that he might be on drugs?
I felt he was suspicious because it was raining. He was in between houses, cutting in between houses, and he was walking very leisurely for the weather. It didn't look like he was a resident that went to check their mail and got caught in the rain and was hurrying back home. He didn't look like a fitness fanatic that would train in the rain. It just seemed like...
Weren't there overhangs, though? Because he was walking, he wasn't standing still? And he was walking closer to the house, which is back from the sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding that right?
The overhangs are just in front of the front doors.
Yeah. You said he started from almost the beginning in that 911 call. You said he came towards you, and he seemed to reach for something in his waistband. Did you think that was a gun?
I thought he was just trying to intimidate me.
To make you think that there's a gun?
A little bit.
Of some kind?
Possibly.
You said in that tape, something's wrong with him, he's checking me out, I don't know what his deal was. So it's almost from the very beginning, you felt, are you saying on that 911 tape that you felt threatened at that moment when you said that to the dispatch?
No, not particularly.
What did you mean with, I don't know what his deal is, he's checking me out?
The way he was coming back, and I was on the phone, but I was certain I could see him saying something to me, and his demeanor, his body language was confrontational.
Do you remember what it was that you said specifically on the tape? Yeah. You said, when we get to the issue where you said on the 911 call that he's running, you said that to the dispatch. Is there any chance in retrospect if you look back on that night and what happened, trying to maybe get into the mindset, because we also have learned that Trayvon was speaking with his girlfriend supposedly at the time, that maybe he was afraid of you, didn't know who you are?
No.
You don't think that, why do you think that he was running that?
Maybe I said running, but he was more...
You said he was running?
Yes. He was like skipping, going away quickly, but he wasn't running out of fear.
You can tell the difference?
He wasn't running.
He wasn't actually running.
No, sir.
Okay, because that's what you said to the dispatcher, you thought he was running. Let me ask you this. At that point, you could hear the unbuckling of the seatbelt, hear you opening the car door, and the dispatch asked you at that point, and this became a very key moment that everyone in the media focused on, and the dispatcher asked you, are you following him? And you said yes. Explain that.
I meant that I was going in the same direction as him, to keep an eye on him so that I could tell the police where he was going. I didn't mean that I was actually pursuing him.
So this moment where someone suggested you were out of breath on that tape, you yourself were not running. And you, I think, made a statement to the police that it was the wind as you were getting out of the car and moving, and that was the sound we hear, not you out of breath.
Yes, sir.
And welcome back to Hannity. We continue now with more of my exclusive interview with George Zimmerman and his attorney, Mark O'Mara. What did you do from that moment forward? Because this is where we get into this minute gap in this case. You know, and what did you do from that minute forward when the dispatch said, we don't need you to follow him? What did you do next?
I walked across the sidewalk onto my street, Retreat View Circle, where I thought I would meet a police officer that I had called.
So you did not continue to follow him in that way?
No, sir.
All right, so you continue from there. You sounded at that moment on the tape a little bit distracted. But what was the distraction? That we were looking for him, or?
I wanted to make sure that, I believe they asked me for my address, and I wanted to be sure that nobody was lingering and could hear my address and then come back. And I was making sure that there wasn't anybody that was going to surprise me, and just trying to give them an accurate location.
Because they said, you know, can we meet you here at a certain location? You said, have them call me.
Yes.
Why did you want them at that point to call you?
I hadn't given them correct address. I gave them the clubhouse vicinity. However, I was walking through to my street, Retreat View Circle, and I was going to give them the actual street number and name.
How long was it, George, after that you saw Trayvon again? because you said you stopped, that you did not continue pursuing him. When did you next see Trayvon Martin?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Where exactly were you at that point? And how far away were you from your car at that moment?
I guess about 100 feet or more.
So you never went further than how far approximately from your car?
I'd estimate it to be approximately 100 feet.
So you never went further than that from the car?
No, sir.
Okay. And so at that point, Trayvon is, all of a sudden you turned around and there he was.
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
He asked me what my problem was.
Expert problem.
Yes, sir. And I was wearing a rain jacket, and I put my cell phone in my jacket pocket as opposed to my jeans pocket where I normally keep it. And I immediately went to grab my phone to this time call 911 instead of a non-emergency. And when I reached into my pants pocket, because that's where I keep it out of habit, it wasn't there, and I was shocked. I looked up, and he punched me and broke my nose.
One shot. So he said to you, you have the problem. Those are the exact words you used. You remember it?
Do you have a problem? What's your problem?
What's your problem? And you said to him, I don't have a problem.
Yes, sir.
You reached for your phone.
I reached for it as I was saying, no, I don't have a problem.
And at that point, you just got hit.
He was already within arm's length from me.
And was that the punch in the nose that broke your nose?
Yes, sir.
Right there, and you went immediately down to the ground?
I don't remember if I went immediately to the ground or if he pushed me to the ground, but I ended up on the ground.
What do you remember happened from there? Because there were police reports and descriptions that you gave, and that you were a little bit dazed, obviously. And at one point you said that you wanted to stop him from hitting your head on the cement.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you told the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so after that first hit, what happened next?
He started bashing my head into the concrete sidewalk. As soon as he broke my nose, I started yelling for help. So I was disoriented, and he started slamming my head into the concrete.
Which is where the lacerations came from.
Yes, sir.
You said it was like your head was going to explode. It was a comment that you'd given to the police.
Yes, sir. He continued to punch me in the head.
How many times would you estimate that he punched you?
Several, more than a dozen.
And hitting you hard. At what moment because you said you feared for your life. At what moment do you remember when you literally, do you remember when you thought, I may die? Is that, because you said that you feared for your life. Do you remember the exact moment when you felt that?
In hindsight, I would say when he was slamming my head into the concrete and I thought I'd lose consciousness, I didn't know what would happen at that point.
And how close was the concrete to the grass? Because a big issue was also the grass stains that you had on your clothes. And you made a statement to the police that you wanted to get to the grass. Was that to protect your head from getting banging into the cement again?
Yes, sir.
How close was that in proximity?
It butts up to the concrete.
And were you able to get to the grass?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do that?
I guess you could say shimmy. I mean, he was straddled on me with his full weight, and I would try and sit up and push myself down. And whenever I would sit up, that's when he would take the opportunity to slam my head back down and punch me in the head and continue to hit my nose.
Was he talking to you a lot during this fight, when he was beating you? Because you're saying he was beating you and pounding your head into the cement. Was he talking to you during that time?
Yes.
And he was saying?
Cursing, telling me to shut up, and then finally telling me he was going to kill me.
And he said those words. And he said it. When did he first see your gun?
After we were on the ground, I shimmied with him on top of me, and it made my jacket rise up. And he being on top of me saw it on my right side.
What happened after that?
I felt him take, he had, after he couldn't hit my head on the concrete anymore, he started to try to suffocate me. And I continued to push his hands off of my mouth and my nose, particularly because it was excruciating having a broken nose and him putting his weight on it. And that's the point in time when he started telling me to shut up, shut up, shut up. And
Why did he tell you to shut up?
I don't know.
We heard the screams on the one recording from your neighbor that was calling the police, and there's been some dispute whose voice that is. Was that your voice screaming, or was that Trayvon Martin's voice screaming?
My voice. Absolutely.
That was your voice?
Yes, sir.
And the police even said at one time they heard 14 screams. You were screaming that loud?
Yes, sir.
And you said to the police at one point that he put his hand over your mouth. Do you think that was to silence you from screaming?
Yes, sir. I believe he, from what the investigators told me, he knew that I was talking to the police, And I was yelling so that I believed that the police officer was there and they just couldn't find me. So I was yelling in the hopes that they were in the vicinity and they would come when they heard me yelling.
Do you remember when you yourself reached for your weapon? Do you remember that moment?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
At that point, I realized that it wasn't my gun, it wasn't his gun, it was the gun.
Did he say anything? Because you said he was talking a lot about the gun. Did he say he noticed the gun?
He said, "You're in the and took one hand off of my mouth, and I felt it going down my chest towards my belt, my holster, and that's when I didn't have any more time."
Do you think he acted more out of a conscious thought? I mean, I know these events happen very quickly. Do you remember consciously thinking, "I got to grab my gun," or did you just do it? Was there a conscious thought that went through your head that you thought you were going to die and you had to take this, you had to get your weapon and fire?
I'd love to give you an answer.
You don't know.
It just happened so quickly.
There was an eyewitness that was out from the very beginning that, in fact, did tell the police the night of the shooting that he saw Trayvon on top of you and did see the beating. There is no witness to the actual shooting itself, right?
Besides myself.
Besides yourself. When you think back, and there was one report, or a police report, that actually said you didn't know after you fired, you thought you missed.
I didn't think I hit him, yes.
Yeah. So what happened immediately after the shooting then, George? I understand one guy came out, he said he had a flashlight, he spoke to you, and you said to call your wife, tell her what happened, I shot somebody. Do you remember that conversation?
The conversation I had with the gentleman, or?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You do remember that conversation. And he did talk about it, and his suggestion is that you were very matter of fact about it. Do you remember what you said to him? Do you think you were in a state of shock? Did you know that Trayvon, when did you know that Trayvon had died?
When probably about an hour after I got to the police station.
After the shooting, you saw that he was laying there, and obviously injured, there was a moment where you realized that he was shot.
Like I said, he sat up and he said something to the effect of, "You got it," or "You got me." I assumed he meant, "Okay, you got the gun, I didn't get it, I'm not going to fight anymore." At which point I got out from under him.
Is there anything you regret? Do you regret getting out of the car to follow Trayvon that night?
No, sir.
Do you regret that you had a gun that night?
No, sir.
Do you feel you wouldn't be here for this interview if you didn't have that gun?
No, sir.
Do you feel you would not be here?
I feel that it was all God's plan, and for me to second guess it or judge it.
Is there anything you might do differently in retrospect? Now the time has passed a little bit.
No, sir.
You know, the detective said, that Detective Singleton quoted you saying, "The bad guys always get away." You also said that in the 911 tape. Did you have a feeling that there were a lot of people that do get away with crimes? In other words, were you sort of predisposed in your mind in some way to think that criminals get away too often?
Not in general. I think in our neighborhood, there's geographic advantages for burglaries.
Do you have any idea, why do you think Trayvon would have confronted you the way he did? I made a comment on the air one day, and I got beaten up pretty bad for saying this could have all just been a terrible misunderstanding or mistake. Do you think maybe, is there any possibility he thought you were after him and you thought he was after you, and there was some misunderstanding in any way?
I've wrestled with that for a long time, but I can't. One of my biggest issues through this ordeal has been the media conjecture, and I can't assume or make believe.
The one witness that you first met, the guy with the cell phone that I mentioned, asked about your demeanor. Right after the shooting, he was the first person, I guess, on the scene.
Yes, sir.
First person you saw, and he said that you looked like you had been, quote, butt-whooped, like you had had a fight, and that you were asking, "Call my wife, just tell my wife," but, he was acting like it was nothing. Is that how you were feeling at the time? Because you didn't find out, you said, till later that Trayvon had passed away.
No, I knew that I had discharged my firearm, and I was scared, nervous. I also thought the police were going to come and see me with a firearm and shoot me. I mean, I was terrified.
Did you look over at Trayvon? You obviously at some point recognized he had been shot, because you didn't know it in the beginning. Did you look over at him at any time and realize he was in really bad shape?
No, sir.
At no point. And how long was it between the time you shot him and the time the police actually got to the scene?
It felt like forever. I'd say 15 to 30 seconds.
It was that quick.
Yes, sir.
Immediate, so in other words, they had already been on their way, and they were there within 15 to 30 seconds. What do you make of all the national media attention in this case? There are crimes that happen every day. The nation is focused on your case. Why do you think that is, and what do you make of it? And what does it mean to you?
It's surreal. I don't like that they've brushed the judgment the way they have. I feel that anytime they have a story that's remotely positive, they interpret it negatively.
You had called police on at least 4 prior occasions and had mentioned black male suspects. I want to give you a chance to respond. Why you called? What were those instances about?
They also stated that, and I never volunteered that information. It was always at their request that I described them, and even when I described them, I didn't volunteer the race until they asked me. And there was also Hispanic kids and white kids that were in the made calls about it. Yes, sir. Let me ask you this. I want to go back to one specific in the case if I can. And it's the issue of you following him. And I asked you earlier about the dispatch call, and you said you stopped, you didn't follow him. There's one moment that you were apparently, as you look at the grounds of where this took place, and there's the apartment, there's the overhangs, and then there's another street on the other side, and you had gone to the other street, correct? At some point. So how do you get to the other street if you're not following him? I mean, where were you going at that point? I was walking from where I had parked my car towards my street. He went right down in between the houses. I walked straight across to.
But in that sense, were you following him?
No, sir.
You were following him?
No, sir.
And this is after the 911 call?
During
the 911 call?
And they stated, we don't need you to do
So why
that.
were you walking back to your street and not back to the car?
I was
At that point, I'm trying to get the chronology right.
certain. Where I parked my car was the back of townhouses. There wasn't a way to know what the street number was. And I knew if I walked straight through, it's a circle, a Retreat View circle. I knew if I walked straight through to there, that would be Retreat View circle, and then I could tell them exactly what 1, 2, 3, 4 Retreat View circle, and not just a general area where my car was like I had done previously.
He's like, damn, I wish I was that thin again. Brother, I feel you. That was dumb. I don't regret getting out that car. Yes, I regret getting out of that car. That was the answer. You should regret getting out of that car. You should have never got out of the car.
Call your next witness, please.
Dr. Valerie Rao.
Should have never got out of the car. And that should have been your answer.
Do you solemnly swear affirm that your testimony in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. Will you please tell the members of the jury your name?
Yes, my name is Dr. Valerie Rao. My last name is spelled R-A-O.
And how are you employed?
I'm the District 4 Medical Examiner.
And what comprises District 4?
District 4, we have 3 counties, Duval, Clay, and Nassau.
And are you the chief medical examiner in your district?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been a medical examiner in total?
32 years.
Jesus
And are you
Christ.
also a licensed physician and surgeon?
Yes,
And how long have you been so licensed in the state of Florida?
since 1981.
Can you
Jesus.
summarize for the members of the jury, please, your educational and professional background?
Yes, I got my degree in medicine in 1971, after which I went to London. I spent a year and a half doing pathology at 2 hospitals, one St. Heliers Hospital in South London and the other St. Andrew's Hospital in East London. After which I came to the US and I did residency, 5 years totally. 2 years doing clinical pathology at Berkshire Medical Center, Pittsfield, Massachusetts. 2 years doing anatomic pathology in Albany Medical Center, Albany, New York. 1 year doing forensic pathology in Baltimore for the state of Maryland. I'm board certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. I then spent a year in Tucson, Arizona, where I did medical examiner work. Sorry. I was medical examiner for a year. 1 year as medical examiner. After which I went to Miami, where I was an associate medical examiner for a total of 19 years. I then took a chief position in District 5, where I was there for 3 years. I went to the University of Missouri in Columbia, where I was associate professor for 2 years, and then came to Jacksonville, where I've been here for about 7 years.
And just briefly, what are your
Welcome
duties
out.
as a medical examiner?
In the state of Florida, we're required to investigate sudden, unexpected, unnatural death, and ultimately to sign the death certificate, the cause and manner of death.
What is meant by the term pathology?
Pathology is the study of disease in the human body.
And what is meant by forensic pathology?
So,
In blunt force trauma, are there different types of blunt force trauma?
yes.
And what are those?
So the
Necessary under the current case law in this state.
She'll be able to testify in those areas.
on the severity of the laceration, you will get Jackson Memorial Hospital. So be taken by the police, having as much as possible in the database before I formulated an opinion. So what I received was a reenactment of the incident involving the fatal shooting. This was recorded on the 27th of February, 2012. I got a set of 36 photographs taken of Mr. Zimmerman, documenting the clothing, the injuries, the medical records from the Altamont Family Practice Clinic. And of course, there were 2 records from this clinic. One was on the 27th of February, and the other one was on the 9th of March, 2012. I got a DVD labeled Sanford PD Lobby and Others. It showed the vehicle going to the police department and Mr. Zimmerman being taken by the police into the department to be booked. A DVD labeled Medical Examiner Report and Photographs. And this included the medical examiner report, the body diagrams, the autopsy photographs. 26 autopsy photographs were taken, the toxicology report, and then a report that states 2 individuals were involved in a physical altercation in the yard, and one of them fired a handgun and the decedent fell to the ground. And the other items in the same folder were the medical examiner autopsy report, the toxicology report. So this is what I received.
Did you also receive 2 photographs of the defendant at the scene the night of the event?
Yes,
And when you said reenactment, when you referred to the reenactment, was that an interview where he conducted a walkthrough and led investigators through the scene and explained to them what happened?
yes.
After reviewing all those items, in terms of severity, how would you classify the injuries to the defendant's head?
They were not life-threatening. They were very insignificant. They did not require any sutures to be applied to Mr. Zimmerman. So, as I will refer to them, insignificant injuries.
Insignificant.
Did you observe any lacerations to the back of the defendant's head?
Yes,
How many?
2.
And were those lacerations depicted in the photographs that you reviewed?
Yes, there was bleeding, so I was not able to look at them after they were cleaned, because subsequently, when he went to the Altamont clinic, they were covered by Band-Aids.
And were you also provided the reports from the Altamont Family Springs Clinic describing the injuries as they were viewed by a physician's assistant the next morning?
Yes,
Your Honor, would you assist me with the lights? Dr. Rao, let me show you first, state 79. Was that one of the photographs from the scene that you were provided?
yes,
And state 76, was that a photograph from the scene you were provided?
yes,
Let me show you states 57, where you also provided that photograph.
yes.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Dr. Rao, let me give you this pointer, you can just press that button. If you would explain for the members of the jury where the lacerations are located that you observed and that were referred to in the family clinic report.
Okay, so we have one small injury right there and one injury right there where the blood is streaming from. So these were the two lacerations.
All right. In the Altamont Family Clinic report, were you also provided with the measurements of each of those lacerations?
Yes.
And are either of those lacerations life-threatening?
No.
Why
No,
not?
she said that already.
Because they were so minor that the individual who examined and treated Mr. Zimmerman told him that the sutures were not required. So she put a Band-Aid on each of them, and that was the extent of the treatment.
All right. Are there also some contusions or a contusion on the back of the defendant's head?
Yes,
And can you show the members of the jury where that is in the photograph?
right there.
And is that a life-threatening injury?
No.
Why not?
Well, the reason I asked for everything was I then looked at the entire case file, and when he walked from the police car to the police department to be booked, he was not incapacitated in any way. He was very alert and walking,
We care about his
in pace with the officers.
Are the
Not about
injuries that you observed to the back of
whether
the
his
defendant's head
injuries were
consistent with his
life-threatening.
head having made contact with a concrete surface?
Yes.
And why do you say that?
So, I've looked at the other areas that were photographed, and they have a sort of a pattern that were punctured, meaning that there were little areas which came into contact with a rough surface. But so looking at the concrete area, again, the reenactment that I was given, it's consistent with his head having come into contact with that rough surface.
And are the injuries
Very
on the
good.
back of the defendant's head consistent with one strike against a concrete surface?
Yes,
And why do you say that?
because if you hit the head one time, it is consistent with having gotten those two injuries at that one time, because it's an area where it is protruding, because the head is protruding, because the head is a round surface, and so that one impact could result in the two lacerations that you see.
And are the injuries you observed to the back of the defendant's head consistent with his head having been slammed repeatedly into a concrete surface?
Okay, so I'm going to give you my, what I think based on the dictionary definition of slammed is. And there are two definitions from two different dictionaries.
You're very literal.
Object, Your Honor. If she's going to define a word from a dictionary, that would be hearsay.
Please approach.
In a very literal sense of the word, he could feel like his head was being slammed. Or his head is just fucking, for lack of a better term, being rubbed against the concrete. I'm sorry. I don't want my head slammed, pushed, rubbed against the edge of the concrete. Either way, what is the point? You got a young, squirrely kid on top of you doing the thing. Why are we still talking about him and his injuries? Should we not talk about Trayvon's injuries? Like, is that not... I don't know why I started.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Rao, using your definition of slamming, your common understanding of slamming, are the injuries to the back of the defendant's head consistent with having been repeatedly slammed into a concrete surface?
No.
Why not?
Because if you look at the injuries, they're so minor that to me the word slam implies great force. And the resultant injuries are not great force.
What type and extent of injuries would you expect to see if the defendant's head had been repeatedly slammed into a concrete surface?
So if somebody's head is repeatedly slammed against concrete with great force, I would expect lacerations. I would expect a lot of injury that would bleed profusely, that would necessitate suturing. And so I don't see that in this picture.
All right, let me turn your attention to States 47. You also provided that photograph.
Yes.
And what injuries did you observe in this photograph, States 47, if you would just describe those for the jury?
Okay. So there is a small abrasion on the bridge of the nose right there. It's a very small little punctate at the tip of the nose.
Can you circle that with your laser, if you would, or just indicate it?
Right
I mean,
there
you can see it.
and right there.
Are you fucking blind?
And are any injuries in this photograph life-threatening?
No.
Why not?
He has no loss of consciousness whatsoever. He didn't have to go to the hospital. He went to a clinic.
Were there any contusions or abrasions that you noted in this photograph?
Yes,
All right, can you, again, show us where those are?
yes. Right there and right there.
How would you characterize or classify the contusions, the severity of the contusions or abrasions to his face?
Very small.
Could all the injuries that you observe in that photograph have come from a single punch or a single blow?
Yes.
And why do you say that?
Okay, so if you look at the distribution of where the injury is, and let's think that I'm the one inflicting the blow. If I was to punch myself right above here, I would get the injury on the nose and on the few contusions on the forehead. So one blow would be able to inflict these injuries.
Are the injuries that you observed to the defendant's face consistent with the defendant having been beaten a dozen times or more in the face?
If he was beaten repeatedly but with no resulting trauma on the face, then yes. But if the force is such that you get trauma, then only one time.
Did you observe contusions to both sides of the defendant's head?
On the sides, yes, yes,
All right, let me show you State 75. Was that a photograph you were provided?
yes.
And could you circle the area of contusion that you observed in State 75?
So one has to disregard this dried blood because it is coming from the laceration on the back of the head that I had demonstrated earlier. So we are looking at a contusion here, and there are very, very fine punctate abrasions that you need to have a close-up photograph to really see them.
And again, explain for the jury or define for the jury what's a punctate abrasion.
Okay, punctate means like a little speck, like a spot.
All right, are any of the injuries depicted in State 75 life-threatening?
No.
Sure, I fucking said
And
they're
in
not
terms of
life-threatening.
severity, how would you classify the contusions or abrasions in this photograph?
Yeah, very small injuries.
Could all the injuries exhibited in
Insignificant.
State 75 have come from a single blow?
Doesn't
Yes,
matter.
one impact against
Insignificant,
concrete, yes.
significant, doesn't matter.
Let me show you State 73. Was that also a photograph you were provided?
Yes.
And what injuries are depicted in State 73?
Okay, so here again, you have to disregard the dried blood that's coming from the laceration to the back of the head. And so you can see very, very faint, again, punctate, small abrasions.
Are any of those abrasions life-threatening?
No,
And how would you classify the abrasions depicted in State 73?
very insignificant.
Could those abrasions depicted in that photograph have come from a single blow?
Single impact, yes.
And why do you say that?
Because the surface area on the side, if you look at my head, and I was to on the concrete, I could get all those injuries from one impact.
You also mentioned that you viewed video clips of the defendant getting out of a police car and walking through the police station that evening. What did his appearance in that video demonstrate to you regarding his injuries?
He was not incapacitated in any way. He walked on his own power, and he was also conversing with the police officers during this reenactment.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Judge, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
You got your appointment to your present position because Ms. Corey, the prosecutor in this case, appointed you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so she's sort of your boss?
Not really, no.
But it was because of her. I mean, she appointed you to this position, right?
Hold on, I'm fixing. fixing my ears. It's very itchy. Itching my ear.
She actually sent my name up to the governor. So if you want to call that an appointment, well, then so be it.
Well, why don't we
But
do
so
this?
be
I'm going
it.
to read a letter to you. Tell me if you consider this appointment. Pursuant to section 406.15, I hereby appoint. I'll approach and let her review it, maybe. I just have it electronically.
It's okay, I could explain.
Okay,
if I
so
could-
let me
if I-
ask the question.
Okay,
Is what I'm looking at a letter signed by Ms. Corey where she says that she appoints you to that position, yes or no?
that was the interim position. I can't say yes or no because I have to explain to you.
Well, I'll tell
That's
you what, I'll
the-
walk you through it. I'll walk you through it, okay?
Okay,
There was a yes to that. She appointed you to the interim position?
yes,
And you had another position as a medical examiner in the state of Florida too, correct?
yes,
That was with the 5th district?
yes.
But you were not reappointed to that position by the governor, were you?
I did not seek reappointment. It
Okay,
was
that was because,
stable.
I'm sorry?
It was stable. I did not seek reappointment.
And it was because of some of the problems that existed in your administration in that office, was it? not?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, you got the job with Ms. Corey's office, or actually in the same district where she prosecutes, correct?
She's a state, yes, yes.
How much of your work is on behalf of the state attorney's office in that district?
Well, the medical examiner really does not work for the state attorney. We are separate, but most of the time we are called by the state. However, the defense can call us. You could call me on this particular trial and I would be here for you, just like I'm here for the prosecution.
Totally get that. My question was, how much of your work is on behalf of the state attorney's office in Duval County?
All the homicides.
All the work, right? You only deal with homicides, right?
No, we do suicides, we do traffic accidents, we do drug overdoses, we do natural death where there is no physician to sign the death certificate. So it's other work. Homicides are a very small percentage of our cases.
I'm sorry, let me clear it up. How much of the work that you do involve crime matters? And I'm presuming in that question that all of your crime matters are dealing with the Duval County State Attorney's Office. So how much of what you do is related to criminal activities?
Okay, so we have a total of 1,165 cases, autopsies.
Okay.
And out of that, we're probably 110 homicides. So that is the proportion.
And in all of that work, you work with these very prosecutors, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, these are the homicide prosecutors for that division or that office, right?
And we have a whole series of state attorneys, yes.
Okay.
But they are in that office,
So they called you to look at this, correct?
correct?
Did they have you look at anything having to do with Trayvon Martin?
No.
No,
Well, they sent me the autopsy report, so I saw that, yes.
But you're not here to tell us anything about
No.
Trayvon Martin. You're just talking about George Zimmerman.
That's correct.
And if I get it right, it's your position that's at least consistent that George Zimmerman may have only received as little as 3, did you call it, what term did you, smashing? Or
Sorry?
slamming. 3 slamming into cement, correct?
I didn't use the word
I'm
slamming.
sorry, I thought it was your word.
No, I got that from the reenactment.
What word would you use to describe what happened to the head that you say hit cement?
Impact.
Impact. So it's your position that there are at least 3 impacts between that head and cement.
Yes.
Okay.
Concrete.
Concrete. However, and you said it's sort of consistent, so I'm going to walk you through some of that. I'm not going to use pictures right now. Let's just chat a little bit about it, okay? I think you used the suggestion that if you hit yourself in the nose, that it could be all one shot, correct?
One blow, correct.
You're not certainly just suggesting that it was only one blow, correct?
No, but consistent with.
And you say consistent with to minimize the number of shots that it could possibly be, correct?
Not minimize, but if you gave me another scenario, I could look at that scenario
Let me give
and
you-
see if it's
Let
consistent.
me give you this scenario. He gets hit in the nose like this, just like that, but it does not go up here. So here's the first shot, and here's the second shot. How many is that?
2,
Consistent with that picture?
it could be, yes.
Is it any more consistent or any less consistent than the fact that there was one shot?
I'm sorry, I didn't get
I'm
that.
sorry. You said earlier that those injuries could be consistent with one shot.
Correct.
And now I think you may have said it could be consistent with 2 shots.
If the way it's depicted, like you depicted, yes,
But you don't, just so we're clear, you don't know how Mr. Zimmerman was hit by Mr. Martin, correct?
correct.
So you're saying it's consistent with 1, potentially, yes?
Yes,
And it also is consistent with 2, correct?
if the way it was portrayed, yes,
Which you don't know.
correct.
So could you just say, is it consistent with 2 as well?
It could be, yes,
Okay, and it could be consistent with 1.
yes,
Okay, and it actually could be consistent with another couple of hits with a palm, or as you said, another couple of hits with a fist that just didn't leave visible injuries.
yes.
So you're certainly not telling this jury that Trayvon Martin only hit Mr. Zimmerman in the face 1 time.
I'm just telling you what the injuries are and what it's consistent with.
Okay. Did you notice in those pictures the cuts on Mr. Martin's knuckle on his left hand, both on the ring finger and a slight one on the pinky?
Okay, those are not cuts, those are abrasions. So because the cut suggests sharp force injury, and they're actually where the skin is rubbed off on Trayvon Martin's hand, correct?
That was a yes? You did notice them?
Yes,
Okay. Are those consistent with striking somebody?
yes,
So we have some injuries, the only injuries, as a matter of fact, besides the gunshot wound, are 2 injuries on his knuckles, correct?
correct.
Curious, since you had a chance to look at the autopsy, were there any other injuries on Trayvon Martin at all?
No,
Any bruising injury?
no,
Any laceration injuries?
no,
Any punctate injuries?
no.
So you know for a fact that Trayvon Martin's head or any part of his body was not in contact with cement, correct?
Well, I didn't see any injuries. You can have a contact, but without producing trauma that's visible. So,
As Mr. Zimmerman could have, correct?
correct.
A dozen of them even, right?
Sorry?
A dozen even, correct?
A dozen what?
Other impacts. Well, let's get more specific. We've now talked about the potential of 2, you would even admit, let me ask you this. Is there a possibility that with a swat or a hit or a fingernail or something, that even this abrasion on his nose could have been a third?
Anything is possible.
Well, you're here as an expert, so
Yes.
I want you to give us your opinion. Is that possible based upon your level of knowledge?
Okay, so I will ask this. I know I'm not supposed to ask you questions,
Go
but
ahead.
you know. So then the next issue would be that each of the punctate marks on his head could have been caused by, you know, a fingernail scratch. Or I mean, that would be the next question posed. And we're looking at the preponderance of the evidence and the opinion rendered thereby. So, you know, we can continue this.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yes. Okay.
But we'll spend a moment on the nose. So you saw on Mrs. Zimmerman's right side, there was a protrusion to his nose, correct?
What does that mean? I don't know. I don't
I'm
know.
using the word protrusion. It was the first photograph. Let's go back and see if we can take a quick look at this.
What does that mean? Well, ma'am, you're the doctor.
You see, you have, we both have one. You have a pointer, correct?
Yes, I do.
You see that spot right there?
That's the abrasion, yes.
No, right below, that little swelling spot right there? Do you see that?
I don't see a spot, but I see swelling, yes.
Swelling, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That swelling to an uninitiated view, actually, it looks like there's a bone over there, doesn't it? But we know it's not, correct?
There is a bone, yes.
Well, but the swelling is not movement of bone, is it? Or is it?
I don't follow that. I'm
Let me just
sorry.
ask you to explain then. What is that swelling on the right side of the nose from?
Okay, so that's trauma, injury.
Okay. And what happens is the body reacts to it by rushing lymph fluid to it and all this other stuff. It sort of tries to take care of the site of injury or trauma.
Yes.
And that recedes pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It depends on the extent of trauma. Yes.
Well, and we know in this case, you acknowledge the trauma and the swelling there, right?
Yes.
And you notice in the pictures after it that the swelling has receded, correct?
Yes.
So it does recede after a few hours?
Depending on the severity. Here it was not severe, so the swelling rapidly declined.
And you know that there was blood coming out of the nose as he was standing up, correct?
Correct.
Where do you think that that was bleeding from?
From inside his nose.
And where would that go if he's laying on his back?
Where would what go?
The
Sorry.
blood?
Well, it depends. If you are alive, you would, if it went back in your throat, you would cough it out.
Or swallow it?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's going back down your throat, isn't it?
Yeah, you cough it out. I don't know if you would swallow it, but maybe that's a good suggestion.
Okay. So we have the nose injury, one. We have the potential of the injury up here that you identified could be a second shot, correct?
It's possible, yes.
Well, I mean, if I showed you a picture, let's just say that we did, in fact, have a video. And the video showed a smash to the head, to the nose here, and then sort of an overhand. Let's say that there was an overhand shot. You had a video, or let's say an eyewitness, who saw an overhand shot. Would that be consistent, the overhand shot with that injury up there?
Oh, the small bruise?
Yeah, right there.
It's possible, yeah.
Well, is it consistent?
It could be.
Okay. On the back here, you testified that you believe that all this was created or
So what they are
consistent to
doing
have
with
been created
every
just one stripe
witness
on the
is
concrete or
just
cement?
Okay, so all this, I don't follow that. I see two
Taking
lacerations.
everything that
and
they are
a small
saying
bruise.
and being like,
Okay, you see this laceration?
so
Yeah,
they
You see
say
this
this,
laceration.
but
Okay,
this
so,
is also
it's being
true.
actually camouflaged by the dried blood and the dripping of the blood, but
I
once
still can't get
cleaned,
over.
the nurse that examined
I don't
him
regret
said
getting
one
out of
was
the car, though.
0.5 centimeters and the other one was 2.0 centimeters, which is very small. And so, after it's cleaned and you look at the photographs, you don't see what
That's
your suggestion may be that there are a
Should've
whole
never fucking
series
said
of
that.
injuries back there.
All right, well, I'm just to ask a couple of questions about all this. You said, I think, in direct examination that this is consistent with
I would
one strike
change-
upon cement, correct?
Concrete,
Well,
correct?
whole outlook.
No, you're not suggesting to some reasonable degree of medical certainty that there was only one strike here, correct?
No,
So this could, according to where this was, let's identify a term. I'm going to use the term crown, and we know what the
'Cause
crown of the
it gave
head
me-
normally is up here.
They are
Correct.
So I'm going to use crown in a different
flashbacks.
term for the
It
next
was
few questions,
God's
okay? And that
plan. I
means
don't know why
the point
God
that
planned
hits
this.
the cement.
God
Can we
didn't
use that
plan
term for just a
this.
couple of questions? Do you know what I mean by that?
God gives
Do I
us
do what, sorry?
choices.
Rather than the crown, which would be the first thing to hit
You
the ceiling if you
pulled
stand
out
straight up,
car.
I'm going to say that, let's just say that this is where the impact on the cement is, okay?
And
Okay.
if God
Now,
gave you the
the head could
choice,
impact just
do
there,
it
correct?
again,
And just hit there,
would
right?
you fucking do it again?
Well, if the impact is on the side.
Absolutely.
by
We
you
don't actually
saying you don't
know
regret
what
getting out
part
of
of his
the
head
car,
contacted the
means
cement.
you would fucking do
fluid.
it again.
We know that there are two injuries that
that,
resulted
sir,
from the impact.
Right.
That's a
Fucked up.
given, right?
And they could be separate, right?
Except that it's in close proximity, yes.
Right.
Why are we
So I
gonna
could
just keep going back and forth?
Hit a
with this?
knuckle, right?
Stop
And
it.
focus you. Is it your testimony that this coloring here, this darkening in this way, is a natural occurrence on his skull and not evidence of a bruising? Yes or no?
I don't see a bruise there, but I did see, because I also have very good photographs, which you can see clearer. There are very fine punctate abrasions.
Let's speak a moment for what you do see then, the punctate bruising.
Not bruising, abrasions.
Punctate abrasions, I'm sorry. Is that the abrasions that you see over here?
Well, again, the photograph is so poor that,
Let me show you what's in, as State's Exhibit 69. Your Honor, these are in already, so I'm just going to identify them for the jury and have her testify from it. And let me ask you if you can look, first of all, let's identify, this is in fact State's Exhibit 69?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
You want to hold it for a second? Thank you. And I'm going to question you about that if you look at the photograph. Is it your testimony that in Exhibit 69, there is no bruising above Mr. Zimmerman's left ear?
There's a shadow.
I just see the punctate abrasions. I don't see bruising. And there are some marks on the head which are nevi, which are moles, brown moles. So you are seeing that also like there and there.
So to point out, 2 inches above his left ear, this area of lightening and darkening, you do not perceive as swelling?
No, I don't think that's swelling. I just think that's the shape of the head, but it's a very, very funny angle. And so there's distortion in that photograph, and I cannot tell you that that's bruising. I'm sorry.
And similar in States 57, so we're clear for the jury. In 57, sort of a back view, I asked you to focus first at the area we just looked at, which is about 2 inches above Mrs. Zimmerman's left ear. Are you suggesting that, again, that is not any type of swelling or bruising, but rather just a natural contour of his head?
So if you are suggesting that that's a swelling, then the bruise should be so marked that I should not have trouble looking and identifying that as a bruise. So I can't comment on that.
Is that a yes or a no?
Like that early
You say that is
after the
bruising
fact, though?
or not?
No,
Just above.
No, I can see the bruise there. If that's what this part is what you're talking about, yeah, I can't say that.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 70, that's in evidence, which is a picture of the
The
right
picture's
side of
not,
Mr.
bro.
Zimmerman's scalp,
And
correct?
Zimmerman's head
And
is
pointing your
lumped
attention
up.
to the
So
laceration, bruising, cut, use your term, not mine, just in the middle of that picture.
Yes, he has a bruise on the right side, plus he has the punctate abrasions. Yes,
The bruise on the right side, how do you think?
come on.
it's together.
Look at number 70, which we've talked about already, and tell the jury which bruise you believe that swelling is connected to.
I think it's that one because
You're
it's,
thinking, I just want to be clear, you're thinking to the one that is behind the ear. You pointed to the one that is 2 inches or so
I think
behind
that's
the
blood.
line of the ear.
I think because that's such a distorted photograph that because, we are able to see very well the right side.
Scalp that shows or doesn't show the swelling that was apparent in State's Exhibit 69.
Okay, so I have the same photographs you have, except mine is, like I said, copies. So this is the photograph that you are describing?
I'm trying to find the ones in evidence for that, if I might have a moment, Your Honor.
All she did was look at some fucking photographs. She didn't examine a body. She didn't do any of those
Ask you
things.
to compare, if you would, what other, and we talked about the nose and the forehead being two separate ones, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so keep going. How many other of those bruises could have occurred? Let's talk about the left side of the scalp. It has been your testimony.
You
So we
just
see the
keep
two
going.
separate bruisings. We talked about that, right?
Yes.
And we also see the punctate bruising in front.
Abrasions.
Pancake freezing.
Anything that
In
would
front of the
medically exclude
patient.
that the right side was hit 4 times.
possible.
Okay. We
I
see
don't
two
think that's
bruises,
what he
right? And they
said.
could be separate, right?
Possible.
Then we see the
Captain,
punctate
however.
abrasions. That could be another one, right?
Frozen
It's possible.
pancakes
Then we
in
see the
front of
swelling that you
Asians.
say may be connected with one of the bruises, but that could be separate, correct?
I don't think so, because underlying the bruise, you have the swelling. It's so impossible to get a bruise and a swelling and say, well, that was two different sites. Now, the swelling is separate from the bruise, yes, but they are one injury.
Presuming that the bruising on State's Exhibit 69 and 70, that the bruising that we see matches up in the jury's mind with that point of swelling, correct? You're making the
It
premise.
does, it does.
Okay. In your opinion,
Well, you can see it,
okay. And the jury will, of course, make that determination, right?
correct.
And then there could be how many maximum times could the back of the head have been hit on the cement?
Well, to me, it was consistent with one, but you suggested by turning the head in different ways, it could be two, it's possible.
3 or 4?
With no injury, yes. If the head is in contact producing no injury, yes.
How about the swelling below the lacerations? Did you notice that?
The contusion.
Below, right.
The contusion, yes.
Could that have been a separate injury?
No, it's possible.
Well, if the head was hit so that
So
just
really,
the crown
what the
hit the cement
fuck?
one time, let's say his head.
Do you
Your
know?
Honor, object to that fact, not evidence.
Hypothetical with an expert overruled.
It's
Thank
possible.
you.
Okay, so the possibility is
Dumbass.
that the head
I don't
being
even know
hit
what the
against the
question
cement,
was. But clearly, it's
easily the
hypothetical.
2 lacerations above may not have ever impacted again when the bottom bruising occurred. The next injury he would have sustained.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Could the injury that he didn't have to survive, could that have been life-threatening?
Object to that small perspective.
Sustained.
Yeah, this
How
whole
much is that a
thing
moment, Your Honor?
is fucking calling for speculation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, any report?
Dr. Rao, who was it that appointed you chief medical examiner for District 4?
The governor,
And are you testifying here today because Ms. Corey wrote a letter on your behalf to the governor some years ago?
no,
Are you slanting your testimony anyway today because Ms. Corey wrote a letter on your behalf to the governor some years ago?
Nobody
absolutely
gives
not.
a fuck.
You were shown some photographs by defense counsel. Were you provided with all of those photographs prior to trial on the disc that you referred to?
Yes,
In fact, I think you referred to 36 photographs of the defendant.
yes,
Did that also include photographs of his hands?
yes.
Would you expect someone who was undergoing a severe attack to try to defend themselves?
Object, Your Honor, outside of scope and also speculation.
Sustained on both grounds.
Bam, bitch.
You were asked about a scenario
likes
where the
him.
defendant may have hit his head on the edge of concrete when you watched the defendant's walkthrough or recreation. Did he describe his head getting hit on the edge of concrete?
No,
Judge, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. May Dr. Royal be excused?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You are
Oh,
excused.
goodness.
Call your next witness, please.
The next witness is available. Can Councilman Burke be brief?
Yes. Need more time, or where are we in that regard? And I guess,
I think both, but maybe we can address some of the specific objections to the pieces of evidence, have you rule on those, then what's left, I might ask for some time for some case law.
well, I was wondering if that is the case, and we're going to spend the time doing this. Do you have any other witnesses that are not on this issue that are here available to testify? Okay, why don't we do that? Why don't we go on to the next witness, and we can take this up after the court is over and take it up at 8:30 again in the morning. So we could do what we can after this unrelated witness testifies,
Yes, ma'am.
and then afford everybody that.
Sounds good, Judge.
Just for planning purposes, we believe the only witness we have available that knows is very short, we believe so, but I guess it's getting close to 5 o'clock anyway, so I think we're all right. Just want to
Okay.
alert the court.
Thank you.
Shut up, brown noser.
Witness is here. Let's go ahead and bring the jury in.
Goodness is here. Is it the end of day 7? I don't know who it is. It's a surprise. Hell, I don't even think the state wants to be there. Somebody had to do this. I don't think anybody really wanted to be there. To be 100% honest. They couldn't have. Somebody had to do something.
Please be seated. Mr. Guy, call your next witness.
Judge Kristen Benson, please.
Who are you? You look like a child.
You solemnly swear affirm that your testimony in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I do not. I don't give a fuck. I do whatever I want to.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you please tell the members of the jury your name.
Kristen Benson.
Ms. Benson, how are you employed?
I work as a latent print analyst for the Seminole County Sheriff's Office.
How long with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office?
I've been with the agency a total of 8 years,
And how long in the area of latent print examination?
just under 3 years.
Can you tell the members of the jury briefly what
What
your
do we
duties
need
are
prints
as a
on?
latent print examiner?
I examine
What?
items of evidence for the presence of latent prints. I also perform comparisons of latent prints to known standards, and I issue reports with my findings.
If you could summarize, please, the training education that you've had to prepare you for your duties as a latent print examiner.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in business management. I also successfully completed both the latent print technician and analyst.
Application and fingerprint comparison.
She will be allowed to testify in that area.
Explain that, if you would, please, for the members of the jury. What is a latent print? What do you mean by that?
A latent print is the unintentional
Partial.
recording of your fingerprints or palm prints. When you touch a surface or an item, residue such as perspiration or body oils that may be present on your hands can then transfer the ridge detail that's found in your fingerprints
Partial
onto a
print.
surface,
Print.
leaving behind the latent print.
Fingerprint.
And what is meant by the expression a latent print of value?
A latent print of value means that there's a sufficient amount of information in that latent and the ridge detail in order to either identify a person or eliminate a person as being the source of that latent print.
Is a latent print of value then one that is suitable for comparison?
Yes,
How can a latent print not be of
What she
value
just said.
or be of no value?
it may lack
Doesn't have
clarity.
enough
It may
detail.
lack information in the ridge detail. It also may be heavily distorted.
If a person touches a surface, and I'll use my example, my thumb on that surface, is there any guarantee that I'll leave a latent print of value?
No.
Why not?
First of all, there has to be enough residue on the hands present to transfer onto the surface. Another reason might be is the surface of the item that you're touching or the object needs to be conducive to receiving a latent print. Generally, heavily textured or rough surfaces are less likely to receive a latent
Get
print
into the
prints
meat and the
for the
potatoes.
purpose of identification.
And if you have a latent print of value and a known ink print, explain for the jury how you go about. Already in evidence. Ask you, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Is that a card that you examined in this case?
Yes.
And can you just kind of hold it up for the jury from where you are and just explain it to them, explain the latent card to them?
Okay, this is a latent lift card that was, a area of interest was developed, and they placed a clear, or whoever lifted this print, placed a clear piece of cellophane tape on top of the latent and then placed it onto the latent print card on the opposite side that you see here.
And did you examine that card to determine whether or not there were any latent prints of value?
Yes, I did.
Explain to the members jury how you went about that.
I used a handheld magnifier to examine the lift areas that were present on this latent lift card.
Did you find any latent prints of value on states 183?
No,
All right. Ms. Benson, did you have any further involvement in the case?
no.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good.
Do you even know from looking at that document you have in front of you where that print was lifted from?
There is a lift location that was filled out that says where it came from.
And what is that location?
The lift location says the slide of a firearm located within item TS-1.
And in fact, taken from a firearm, correct?
That's what's indicated on the lift card, yes.
Okay. And did you only get one latent print
Yeah.
to review?
Yes, I only received one latent card to review.
And you had mentioned that environmental effects can have a negative effect on latent prints, correct?
Yes, it can damage latent print.
And I think you mentioned that rain itself can,
It can.
because what is left as part of the latent print or the makeup of the latent print are oils from the skin,
It can be, yes.
okay, and other debris, but it allows for the raise determination because the fingerprint can leave a minute amount of oily substance that actually is the
They
print itself,
couldn't
right?
pick up
Yes.
any
And
print
water can wash that away.
from
Yes.
George nor Trayvon
So that
on the gun.
Fingerprints may have existed on an item that you would lift a latent from, and there'd be no latents whatsoever, correct?
That's correct.
Even though the gun's been handled by 1, 2, or 3 people.
That's correct.
Any other latent work or fingerprint work that you did have anything to do with the Zimmerman case?
No.
Great, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. May Ms. Benson be
Fucking
excused?
great.
Thank you. You are excused.
Is that it?
Instead of having you sit back in the jury room, I'm going to go ahead and excuse you for the evening. During the not to read or create any emails, text.
Is that it? We just got a bunch of quiet. And that's it. And that's it. That would be his wife. A spoiler alert. They're not married anymore. I don't know what happened. Okay. That'd be all. That'd be all, folks. That is the end of day 7. Woohoo! We're gonna move on to day 8. Not tonight. It's now 3:30 in the morning. I gotta work tomorrow. So that's all I have for tonight. Okay, it's been real, it's been fun, and it's been real fun. So I shall see you on the flip side. Yo, yo. Peace out. Homies.